I teased, "You're already acting like my wife." She smiled. "Then marry me." The moment those words left my mouth, I expected laughter. Instead, the woman standing beside me stopped adjusting the collar of my shirt, looked into my eyes with quiet certainty, and smiled in a way that made the noisy grocery store disappear around us. My heart, which had spent years hiding behind jokes and excuses, suddenly realized it had nowhere left to run. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, hope, forgiveness, compassion, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps more heartfelt stories reach people who may need them today. My name is Nathan, and this happened in a small town outside Nashville, Tennessee. 3 years before that afternoon, I had buried more than dreams. My father had passed away after a long illness, leaving behind a mountain of medical bills and a family hardware store that was barely surviving. Every morning I unlocked the old wooden doors, hoping customers would come. Every night I locked them, wondering if it would be the last time. Somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that love was a luxury for people who weren't constantly counting every dollar. Then Rachel walked into my life. She wasn't looking for romance. She had recently moved to town after accepting a job at the local elementary school. She visited the hardware store, searching for supplies to build bookshelves for her classroom, because the school's budget had been cut again. She smiled more with her eyes than her words, and she thanked everyone as though they had done her a great favor, even when they had simply handed her a box of screws. Weeks turned into months. She became a regular customer, then a friend. She brought homemade soup when she heard I was working late. She secretly paid for coffee whenever we met before work. She remembered birthdays, checked on my elderly neighbor, and somehow made ordinary days feel lighter without ever trying to impress anyone. Still, I kept telling myself she deserved someone with a better future than I could offer. One Saturday morning, we went grocery shopping together after volunteering at a neighborhood food drive. She filled the cart with practical things, comparing prices and reminding me that I needed healthier meals instead of frozen dinners. When she reached over and straightened my wrinkled shirt with an affectionate smile, I laughed and said she was already acting like my wife. Her answer changed everything. She simply smiled and said that if I believed that, maybe I should marry her. There was no dramatic crowd, no music, no kneeling proposal, just two ordinary people standing beside a shopping cart filled with bread, vegetables, and paper towels. Yet somehow it became the most extraordinary moment of my life. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't love her, because I was terrified. For days afterward, I avoided the conversation. I buried myself in work while the store's financial problems became worse. Finally, I admitted the truth. I wasn't afraid of marriage. I was afraid of failing someone who deserved happiness. Rachel listened without interrupting. When I finished, she gently reminded me that partnership wasn't about finding someone with a perfect life. It was about building one together. She wasn't asking me to rescue her. She was asking me to let her stand beside me. A week later, the hardest storm our town had seen in years damaged several downtown businesses, including the hardware store. I stood inside looking at the leaking roof and soaked inventory, believing this was the end. The next morning, I unlocked the door expecting silence. Instead, dozens of people were waiting outside. Neighbors, customers, teachers, church members, and parents from Rachel's school had come carrying ladders, tools, cleaning supplies, and warm breakfasts. Some repaired shelves. Others replaced damaged flooring. Local contractors donated materials. Children wrote encouraging notes that they taped across the front counter. Rachel had told no one to save me. She had simply spent months loving her community, and when she needed help, that same kindness came back, multiplied. Standing in the middle of that crowded store, I finally understood something my father used to say. Wealth isn't measured by what's in your bank account. It's measured by how many hands reach for yours when life becomes too heavy to carry alone. That evening, after everyone had gone home, I found Rachel sweeping sawdust from the floor. This time, there were no jokes hiding my feelings. I thanked her for believing in a future I couldn't yet see and asked if she would still marry a man whose greatest strength was finally learning he didn't have to face life alone. Her eyes filled with tears before she quietly nodded. Yes, if this story has touched your heart so far, please take a second to support the channel by liking the video and sharing it with someone who still believes that genuine love is built through kindness, not perfection. Before we reach the ending, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment telling us whether you believe the strongest relationships begin with friendship, trust, and serving others together. Your stories inspire this community more than you know. Nathan and Rachel were married the following spring in a small white church, surrounded by the same neighbors who had once rebuilt a struggling hardware store. They never became wealthy in the way magazines measure success. But together, they built a life filled with laughter, purpose, and open doors for anyone who needed a little hope. Sometimes the greatest love story doesn't begin with a grand declaration. Sometimes it begins in the produce aisle of an ordinary grocery store with a simple joke, an honest smile, and two people brave enough to choose each other, despite every reason to be afraid. And in the end, that choice became the richest blessing either of them could ever have imagined.